I'm Dwayne Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, homes are threatened as a wildfire keeps spreading near Mount Laguna in the Far East County. We will have the latest on the Chariot Fire.
Pico, the more you use, the much more you'll pay. How much SDG&E's rate hike will impact your bill and what you can do to lower your energy cost. Then today, thousands of employees were forced to take the day off without pay. How sequestration furlough days will impact San Diego's economy.
Also tonight, we launch a new weekly feature answering your questions about the Affordable Care Act. KPBS Evening Edition starts now. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. The Chariot Fire continues to burn tonight, more than 3 days after it started. In rugged terrain south of Julian, firefighters are taking precautions and urging folks along Sunrise Highway to leave. KPBS Business and Environment reporter Eric Anderson joins us from the News Center with an update. Eric, what's the situation with those evacuations?
Well, the flames have scorched a little bit more land today. The latest word is about 4,600 acres. 8 structures have been damaged, with the wildfire considered about 15% contained. Fire officials did expand the evacuation zone along Sunrise Highway this afternoon from Mount Laguna Lodge to Interstate 8, basically all of Sunrise Highway. The flames jumped across that road about a mile or so north of the lodge, and they are moving in a southwesterly direction. CAL FIRE's Mike Moeller says about 160 structures are at risk. Not all of those are year-round homes. Moeller says most are vacation cabins. There are also some campgrounds and other outbuildings at risk. 2 lodges have been destroyed, the Elbar Shrine Camp Lodge and the Sierra Club Foster Lodge. The Red Cross has set up an evacuation center at a middle school in Alpine, but only a handful of people took advantage of that facility today.
And what kind of forces are being brought into play for this fire?
Well, CAL FIRE's Mike Moeller says there are about 1,300 firefighters up in the rugged country fighting the fire on land. In addition to hand crews, there are a number of fire trucks, water tenders, and bulldozers in the battle. State and federal firefighters are also attacking flames from the air. 4 fixed-wing aircraft, 16 helicopters are dropping water and retardant on the flames. And Moeller says even more resources are on the way because the fire is still only about 15% contained.
And we know with these wildfires, weather always plays a part. Is it hurting or helping at this point?
Well, right now, a little bit of both, actually. It's hot in the mountains. There are erratic winds up there, but it's not a Santa Ana wind condition that can turn a wildfire into a firestorm. Humidity levels expected to go up a bit this week. That should help. And the National Weather Service says forecasters are predicting afternoon thunderstorms as the week wears on. Now, the rain does help the firefighters, but of course, lightning could start more fires. And we are going to continue to follow the progress of this blaze. We'll have updates online at kpbs.org.
Business and Environment reporter Eric Anderson. Federal investigators are still looking tonight for the cause of Asiana Airlines that crash landing this past weekend at San Francisco International Airport. Fire department there says it's possible one of the 2 teenagers killed Saturday was run over by a fire truck, but the coroner says it will be weeks before they know for sure. Investigators say the jet was traveling too slowly during its approach for landing. Now they're trying to determine whether the pilot's inexperience was a factor and if there were any equipment malfunctions. A product malfunction is being blamed for an accident at a fireworks show in Simi Valley last week. More than 36 people were hurt when fireworks went off on the ground and sprayed the crowd. The fireworks company says it may have been a shell malfunction, and they had a similar problem in Laguna Hills. The latest tiff between San Diego's mayor and the city attorney has been resolved. Jan Goldsmith has lifted his ban on closed meetings between his staff and the mayor's office. Last week we told you he accused Mayor Filner of violating the law by removing one of his staff from a closed session. Goldsmith wanted assurances it wouldn't happen again. Now, he tells UT San Diego, the weekly closed session meetings are back on, but he's not saying anything more. Sunday was Election Day in Mexico. Voters went to the polls in 15 states, and the Institutional Revolutionary Party, or PRI, dominated in most of them. But the governor's race in Baja California has yet to be called. Jill Replogle from our Fronteras desk joins us from the News Center. Why has the governor's race in Baja gotten so much attention, Jill?
Well, really two reasons. First, because of the historical significance of this seat. The PRI had nearly complete control over politics in Mexico for most of the 20th century, 71 years. And then in 1989, Baja California became the first state to elect an opposition governor. That opposition party, the PAN, has held on to the governor's seat in Baja until now. But they risk losing power back to the PRI in this election. And second, because Mexico's president, Enrique Peña Nieto, has forged a delicate political pact with opposition parties. He's trying to push through reforms to the state-run oil company Pemex and to the tax system. And some political analysts and politicians are saying the outcome of the Baja governor's race could affect that pact.
And what happened with the vote count?
Well, the company that runs Baja's computerized vote tally found a problem last night. They say it only affects about 1% of the vote, but election authorities decided to hold off on making a call until they can count the ballots by hand.
Do we have any idea of who might win this one?
When the election authorities halted the computerized vote tally, the PAN candidate Francisco Vega de la Madrid, he was ahead by 3 percentage points, and that was with almost 98% of the votes counted. But again, election authorities aren't going to call the race until they do a hand count, and that could take until next Sunday.
We are following it on fronterasdesk.org. Fronteras reporter Jill Replogle. SDG&E is raising our electricity rates on September 1st, and the more you use, the more you'll have to pay. Peggy Pico explains.
San Diego Gas and Electric says the typical residential customer uses about 500 kilowatts of energy per month. Now, the more energy you use, the higher your rate increase will be. Here to explain the rate hike is SDG&E's Senior Vice President Lee Chavron. Lee, thanks so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome.
How many customers are going to be affected by this rate hike, and which one's the most?
Sure. Come September 1, the Commission ordered that's when the rate hike should go in. And about 75% of our customers will see very little, and about 25% or 325,000 customers will see a material increase in their bills.
So everybody will see a little bit, but that 25% that's going to see a significant, what is it about their bills that's going to cause a higher rate?
Well, unfortunately, we have a rate system in California that was set by the legislature during the energy crisis, and it's still in place today, and it's broken. And so the more you use, exponentially, the more you pay.
Okay, so it's based, yeah, so, okay, let's talk about that. So if you're the average consumer using about 500 kilowatts per month, how much might you see in your bill?
You might see your bill go up about $15 a month, but if you're 1,000 kilowatt hours, you may see your bill as much as $75 a month go up.
Are any businesses, is this sort of across the board, or is it residents right now?
No, those are the residentials, but all of our customers, including small businesses and large businesses, will pay their proportionate share of this increase.
Okay, and how come the prices are going up?
Sure. Well, the Commission has a proceeding once every 4 years, and it looked at what does it cost to supply safe and reliable services, just for the pipes and wires, not for the commodity. And because we have new environmental laws and permits, and also all of our reliability of our system, automatic redirection of energy when a circuit goes down, those costs have gone up, plus some inflation.
Is any of this a rate increase, and I have to ask this because of the San Onofre, we understand there might be some of that coming down the pipeline?
Well, the answer is no. That is a separate proceeding that's currently pending before the Public Utilities Commission. This is for the non-commodity or non-San Onofre costs.
And I know you just touched on this, but remind us again where this money, the extra money, is going to be spent, or where it's headed to?
Sure. Where this money goes for is for providing new service to customers, all the new environmental laws that were put in place by California, as well as higher permit fees that are required by all the cities, as well as new technology so that we can redirect energy when there are outages on one circuit. They can be redirected automatically to another circuit so that the customers see no impact.
And speaking of the customers, is there a reward system as part of this rate hike? Like if you conserve more than you were spending before or using before, do you get an extra break?
For a customer, if a customer uses less energy, they will not pay as much as they otherwise would. But if they get into the lower tiers, they'll pay a lower rate for those energy kilowatt hours that they do use.
That's right. Okay, so the four-tier system, if you could just briefly touch on that, where most people land and what the four tiers are.
Tier 1 and 2 is where most of our customers fall in, and they've got rates of about almost 15 cents a kilowatt hour and 17 cents. But if you're in Tier 3, now you're at 26 cents a kilowatt hour. And if you're in Tier 4, the high users, you are at approximately 29 cents a kilowatt hour.
Okay, so based on the usage again with that. I know some energy is sold to other states, Arizona and Tijuana. Are those customers also going to be impacted by this rate hike?
Well, first, the energy is provided to them, but that is on a wholesale, and it has no effect from this proceeding.
Okay, and you had talked about earlier that the system is based on sort of the calculation, this energy crisis back in the 70s. What is SDG&E doing? Would you like to see that change on how these things are calculated?
Sure. First, it's the energy crisis from 2000.
Oh, 2000. All right, not quite as bad as far as the 70s. That was a whole different one.
Absolutely. And SDG&E has been in the forefront at the legislature and at the PUC to change the rate structure. Assembly Bill 327 has moved through the Assembly and is now on the Senate side of the House. And we hope that it passes there, that will give the PUC the ability to change rates, to charge customers what it really costs to serve them. No more, no less.
And so we'll hear about that. When do you think that might be voted on?
Well, it will go to the Senate floor probably, if it gets out of the Appropriations Committee, probably in early September. Okay. And then it will be on the governor's desk to sign. Okay,
SDG&E's Lee Chevron. Thanks so much for the update.
Oh, you're welcome.
Water or hydroelectric power may someday fill the gap left by the closure of the San Onofre nuclear plant. County Water Authority says it will study whether to build one at the San Vicente Reservoir in the East County of Lakeside. Officials say such a plant could produce enough power for 325,000 homes. Results of the study are expected next spring. A federal judge has ordered the NFL and thousands of former players to negotiate in a case about concussion-related injuries. The retired players want to sue, but the league says the case should go to arbitration. The negotiations are to settle the jurisdiction question. About 4,200 former players are involved in the case. They say the NFL downplayed conditions linked to traumatic brain injuries, such as those suffered by former San Diego Charger Junior Seau, who committed suicide last year. Unpaid furlough days for thousands of civilian military workers begins this week. The sequestration cuts will also affect the California National Guard. Peggy Pico has this update.
The Department of Defense must cut $85 billion this fiscal year under sequestration. That works out to thousands of civilian, military, and defense workers being forced to take 1 day a week off without pay for the next 3 months, resulting in about a 20% cut in their pay. Here with more on the trickle-down impact is Frank Hewitt with San Diego's Defense Industrial Association. And Frank, welcome back.
Hi, thank you very much. It's good to be back.
Tell us about these jobs. Which specific jobs or employees are affected by this DOD furlough?
By this furlough, we're looking at all government civil service employees throughout the DOD.
So you have some numbers on that.
I do. In California, that's 57. There are 57,000 of them. We're second, right behind Virginia, which has 72,000. And Texas follows us at 45,000.
And
so
many of those 57,000 are here in Southern California, correct?
Yes, they are. We're the single largest central point for defense work in California.
Right. Let me ask you this, though. So you said all civilian employees. So to be clear, no uniformed military, no Navy per se if you're an enlisted person. However, how does this impact the contract work here in San Diego?
Well, the contract work is separate, and there are a lot of contractors that have already laid off personnel, their indirect workforce, as opposed to a direct labor workforce under contract. If their contracts have been scoped down, then they've laid off some of those people also. So those layoffs have been taking place since the December 2012 timeframe, moving forward in anticipation of sequestration.
Right, and 1 day a week may not sound like a whole lot to a lot of people, but we're talking about upwards of $1,000 a month cut from people's salaries. I hear people are trying to renegotiate car loans, home loans, things like that. What are employers doing? Are they staggering furlough day? I mean, how can they cope with this?
Well, employers aren't. The federal government is staggering some of that a little bit. They have the latitude within their commands to figure out how they lay off or furlough those civil service workers over the next 3 months. On the contractor side, those folks are laid off, so it isn't 1 day a week. They have no job. They're in the unemployment lines.
Okay. What about for the military then? Is this going to ultimately impact the military and what they're doing?
The cuts have to come somewhere. And when Admiral Vern Clark was here in San Diego last fall he is a retired four-star, was the CNO, and he sat a panel at SDMAC on sequestration. Right. And one of the questions he was asked was, what does the defense budget have to look like moving forward in order to right-size the force? And the answer was $500 billion a year. That's not the base budget of the DoD budget. That's the total DoD budget, and it includes any wars we're in, not the additional augmented funding to fund those wars.
Well, I understand this for this fiscal year, $1.8 billion the DoD, the furloughs, the DoD anticipates it will save them $1.8 billion for this fiscal year. Will these furloughs be likely to continue the following 2014, that fiscal year?
I would hope that the country is able to get sequestration under control, and we start to do this in a smart way. Presently, I call sequestration insanity. And so...
Is there a max amount of days they can furlough?
There are. The DoD can furlough its civil service workforce to a maximum of 22 days in any fiscal year. So we're at half of that for 2013. So the worst it could get if furloughs were used is 22 days. So it would be an entire fiscal year, a 12-month period, instead of a 3-month period, and it will only be double. So
is there anything that can be done to prevent this next year besides this limitation by the federal government?
Yes, we can do things smart. And Larry Farrell, who's the president of NDIA National Defense Industrial Association in Washington, in National Defense Magazine, has got an article that says if we did acquisition smartly in DoD, we could save 10% of the acquisition cost. That's a big number, and that could be applied to help reduce the budget and therefore save on some of these furlough days, maybe even keep them all from occurring by doing things smartly. We could continue to put a hiring freeze on civil servants and then allow normal attrition from the workforce, the civil service workforce, to be able to make up that deficit.
Well, it's certainly having a far-reach effect by the way you explain it. Frank Hewitt, San Diego's National Defense Industrial Association, thanks so much for the update.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate being on.
A recent poll shows 4 out of 10 Americans don't know the Affordable Care Act is moving forward as law, although the mandate for employers to provide health coverage for all workers has been delayed a year. Tonight, we're actually launching a weekly Q&A series to answer questions you may have about the health care law. It's called Second Opinion, and Speak City Heights reporter Megan Burks joins us to answer your questions. So who's asking our first question, Megan?
Well, Paula Miranda is a 31-year-old North Park resident, and she's also a first-generation immigrant from the Philippines. Her mom brought her and her brother here to provide for them, but now the tables have turned and they're caring for her. Here's Paula's question.
So my mom is a permanent resident here, and she's been here for about 30 years, and I've always wanted to know what benefits she's going to have under the Affordable Care Act.
And what does she mean by permanent resident?
It means her mom has a green card. She's been living here legally for about 30 years. There are some other things you need to know about her. She doesn't have insurance through her job. She makes too much to qualify for Medi-Cal, which under Obamacare would be about $16,000. And at 59, she's too young for Medicare.
So what are her options then?
The key takeaway is that immigrants who have had legal status for more than 5 years can expect to see what most Americans will. In Ms. Miranda's case, she should purchase a health plan through the state's insurance exchange covered California sometime between October and March. You may have heard of a 5-year waiting period for immigrants. That applies only to recent immigrants who want to enroll in Medi-Cal. If you have a question about the Affordable Care Act you'd like to ask, you can ask it at kpbs.org/source.
Speak City Heights reporter Megan Burks. It's illegal in San Diego to smoke in a public park, a beach, or even at a Padres game, but you can still light up on campuses of the city's 2 largest universities. Talking about San Diego State and UC San Diego. KPBS health reporter Kenny Goldberg tells us that's about to change.
At UC San Diego, students grab a quick smoke before hitting the books. Smoking is permitted on campus under certain restrictions. People can't smoke indoors or within 25 feet of an entryway. Smoking is allowed at this area near the library, in parking lots, and on campus sidewalks and pathways. That's all going to end on September 1st, when UC San Diego will go completely smoke-free. Karen Kalfas is in charge of all of the wellness-related services for UC San Diego students. She says a few years ago, some students came up with the idea of limiting smoking to just a few areas on campus.
But then in 2011, there was a meeting at the Office of the President for the whole system of the UC, and we were discussing a different type of wellness initiative, and smoking came up, and the question arose, why are we still smoking on campus? And we all thought we shouldn't be.
Kalfas formed a subcommittee which produced a paper advocating that the entire UC system go smoke-free. UC regents agreed. Last January, UC President Mark Yudof sent a letter to all school chancellors announcing the smoking ban. He gave the universities 2 years to prepare for it. Kalfas says UC San Diego is ready to lead the way this fall.
Smoking is the #1 health habit that leads to the highest amount of morbidity and mortality. So the one thing people can do to protect their health the most is to quit smoking. So these are things that UCSD really values, and we want to create a healthier environment for everybody who's here, both faculty, staff, students, and our visitors.
The situation is different at San Diego State. SDSU has 12 designated smoking areas. This one, near the KPBS building, offers benches and protection from the sun. One smoking area lies right in the middle of one of the most beautiful parts of the campus. Graduate student Shauna Dayon thinks it's a shame.
Yeah, I think that it encourages people to smoke in a comfortable environment, and I think it also ruins the hill for the other students, too.
Dayon isn't some innocent bystander. She's a tobacco control advocate who's getting her master's degree in public health. But you don't have to be in graduate school to realize San Diego State has a major problem with cigarette litter. Last year, Dayon was involved in a special cleanup on campus. She says students collected 24,000 cigarette butts in just 1 hour.
The butts are everywhere, and they blend in very well, and that they aren't biodegradable, and that they are harmful, and that people should not litter them. I think everyone knows that smoking is bad for their health. I don't think they also realize how bad it is for the environment, too.
Student Valentino Nguyen has heard all about the hazards of smoking. Still, he believes students should have the right to smoke on campus.
If you don't like smoke, then just go away from it.
It's that simple.
Yeah. I mean, this is everybody's air, you know?
Nguyen says there's nothing wrong with designated smoking areas.
Like you go to a library, it's supposed to be a quiet place. You know, you go to a smoke area to smoke. And you just have to understand there's rules for every location and place and time. So there's a time and place for everything.
San Diego State's Dr. Thomas Novotny doesn't see things that way. He's a former U.S. Assistant Surgeon General, and he worked on the International Treaty on Tobacco Control. Novotny says when it comes to protecting people from secondhand smoke, designated areas just don't cut it.
But what we know does work is when you ban it completely. Going halfway doesn't work. And so that's why I think it's important to have a completely smoke-free campus and not designated areas. What we know is that it didn't work in restaurants, it didn't work in airplanes, it didn't work in work sites. The only way it really works is to say, look, there's no smoking here. And people change their behavior.
Smoke-free campuses are not a new idea. For example, San Diego's Mesa College went smoke-free in 2007. Nationwide, there are more than 1,100 smoke-free campuses. UC San Diego's Karen Kalfas is looking forward to adding her school to the list.
And I'm looking forward to a time when I can walk across campus and not smell smoke, and I'll be glad to have that for all of my colleagues and friends here.
Kenny Goldberg, KPBS News.
I'm Jeffrey Brown. On the next News Hour, the latest on the uprising in Egypt, plus combating cyber espionage. That's Monday on the PBS NewsHour.
Earlier, we talked about the possible impact of the weather on the Chariot Fire in the East County. Here's a look at the forecast. Cloudy along the coast with temperatures in the 70s, low 90s for the inland valleys tomorrow, dropping into the mid-80s later in the week. Sunny and clear in the mountains through Wednesday, but thunderstorms are expected to roll in by Friday, much the same for the desert, with temperatures in the triple digits. You can find all the latest on the Chariot Fire on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.